Alright, back by popular demand, I've got the Poison Pathfinder, the Tactical Nuke Pathfinder here, and I'm going to go over some of the build details. I've got a build guide that I'll link in the description that I made. And okay, yeah, I guess let's get into it. Here's some of the stats. I've updated my gear recently, so I don't look like such a scrub. I decided that it was going to be worthwhile to invest in some armor because I kept getting one shot. Apparently, don't get hit. It doesn't work as well as you might think because there's just some mobs that are in this game that just slap from a huge distance. Okay, so anyways, I don't really know where to start, so I'm just going to go over gear first. I think people want to see that. Here's my bow. What you want to look for, ideally, is high physical damage on a cultist bow base. The way poison works is it does damage based on your physical and chaos damage. So I thought this would be super cheap to get. So I put some quality on it and I slapped some runes in there. I'll tell you what runes are real quick because I know people are going to ask. I've got a bunch of them. They are the iron runes, I guess. I had forgotten. So yeah, put those in there, got some decent stats on it. I actually slammed the lightning damage and dex on here, which is actually pretty good. It's not super useful. Again, all you want is the physical and attack speed, I guess. Anything else is bonus, but I got kind of lucky. Helmet, I'll just go over stuff kind of quick. Armor and evasion base is probably going to be best. I'm still testing stuff out. I think maybe if I can eventually get good enough evasion gear, I'll be able to take acrobatics. But as you see here, I get 70% less evasion rating when that's allocated, so it's going to be tricky. On this, all you really need is life and resists. The bonus here, like in my situation, is the mana and intelligence, because I'm kind of running a ghetto mind over matter setup over here, where some of the damage is taken before mana. Now, I'll kind of cover that in a little bit, but I've got this amulet that has damage recoup as mana, and I thought that was pretty worthwhile. I go out of mana real quick with this toxic stuff, this toxic growth. I mean, it's kind of bad. But usually the mana flask is fine, and the rate that I kill stuff makes it okay, and I'm not usually fighting bosses too long anyway. So on the amulet, I would say in order of importance, life and resists. You can get anything else, that's great. I slammed this. I bought it with only a few mods. I slammed like ES, rarity. So yeah, just get resists and life basically. On the quiver, I got a primed quiver base. I think it's best. I'm not really sure. But the two things you want here are physical damage to attacks and increased damage with bow skills. Those are going to be the highest DPS increases. If you want to really splurge, you get the +2 to projectile skills, and that would be pretty great, but it's just wildly expensive, and I think you're going to get more bang for your buck out of having fizz damage and damage with bow skills. Again, everything else here is bonus. Accuracy is a useless stat. I don't need a single point of it. Crit damage bonus is useless because I'm not critting. Dex is actually kind of good. Life per kill is, whatever. We'll do rings. Fizz damage, chaos damage, life, resists. That's kind of what you want. That's what I went for because I wanted to use my rings for damage. I bought the rings with just those stats. It was just fizz and chaos damage, and then I just slammed it. I had a bunch of exalts. I mean, I'm farming a ton, but it's likely that you're gonna want just resists. I mean, look in the build planner. It'll have details about the stats you want. On this ring, same. I bought it pretty bare bones. I used it to fill up some resist and then slammed on, I don't know, probably 16% cold res. So just do your best to get some damage here with the fizz damage to attacks and chaos damage. If you can't find it, it's not the end of the world. Just fill resists up. Snake bites are important. These don't really have a crazy roll range, so just get whatever you want. The evasion rating increase on here between 40 and 60, as you can see, isn't going to matter at all because the base is super low. Chaos Res is kind of good, but you don't want to pick too much for these. I forgot the chest. We'll do that first. I should say putting quality on good pieces of gear matters a lot. You get a lot of extra armor and evasion out of it. And again, I think the hybrid base is going to be best because I need some sort of physical damage reduction, or else I'm just going to keep getting one-tapped. I tried playing with Enfeeble, and it's just not good. I tried a Blasphemy Enfeeble setup, but the radius on Blasphemy these days is so useless. I hate it. It's going to have to get buffed, or nobody's ever going to use it, I think, unless you're like a witch or sorcerer. Anyhow, thanks for coming to my TED Talk about Blasphemy. On the chest, you want to fill up life and resistances. If you can get a bonus to armor and evasion, that's pretty great. Because on the tree, I have this node increases my evasion rating from the body armor, which kind of helps me get to the soft cap on evasion. So yeah, that's good. Use your runes to fill up resist, as you can see on my gear. The belt, I went for more armor and resistances. You're going to pay a lot if you try to get a belt like this. I think this was 15 exalts or something. The dual resist with armor and life, it's just expensive. But those are kind of what you want. Just fill up resist if you can. This is another slot you could probably sacrifice life to fill resist, kind of like the rings. Boots, probably going to be expensive. I actually found these myself, which helps out quite a bit. But movement speed probably takes the cake. You want as much as you can. I think there's boots with 30%, but that's too rich for my blood. Maybe I'll find a pair if I'm lucky. Life and resistances here. I know I mentioned it earlier, but icing on the cake is getting these attributes like dexterity here, strength here, int on the helm. Like all of these are going to matter. I mean, the gear itself requires strength and dex, and then we're going to use gems that require intellect, and trust me, it matters. Life flask, pretty basic. I went for increased amount recovered, and I have a decent amount of quality, so this thing, you know, you can chug it, and it's pretty good. Mana flask, same thing, increased amount recovered, because I've got a decent mana pool, and I'm taking damage from mana, like I mentioned, recouping some of it with the amulet, but also spending a ton with my abilities. And then for the charm, I have a whole stash tab full of charms of every single type, and I can put different charms on depending on the map, or you know, whatever I need at whatever moment. But I think for the most part I can get away with the golden charm, which helps me get a little bit better loot. Goes nice with the amulet, got a little bit of extra rarity going on. Okay, that's kind of the gear breakdown. That's the basics. Before we dive into the passive tree, I think it's best to cover skills real quick, because this is kind of important. I've got 5 links here, but I played most of this character with much less, so you don't really need it. It's super helpful though, it's like quality of life. So I qualityed up this gas arrow. It gives it a higher radius of everything. So the impact radius goes up, the cloud radius goes up, and the explosion. So I do corrosion on this to break armor, and it breaks armor very well in a huge radius. I have Demolisher, which is what you want to drop if you're on a 4-link. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Bursting Plague. This is not to be overlooked, because when you're clearing, and you've seen it in the videos, this will inflict poison, and it will also start adding up the Bursting Plague. And so when an enemy dies, it pops, and it does AoE damage, and when it pops, it also proliferates the poison from being a Pathfinder. So the most damaging on the poison is spread to enemies within 1.5 meters. So you'll see that in the videos as well. Like I'll just shoot an arrow out and then run away, because everything that hits that arrow is just going to die. It's pretty awesome once you have the damage. Toxic Growth is up next. This is the insane single target. When you set out a bunch of these, you can pop it with anything that poisons. You can Plague Nova them, or you can Gas Arrow them like that. The typical combo you want to do, like if you're setting up for a boss, is just set a bunch of them down and pop it with your Plague Bearer or Plague Nova, and you'll just nuke the boss. Otherwise, when you clear, you know, just shoot it out like that. Throw out a gas arrow, and then launch some growth into that, and it pops instantly. Because this is a new ability. The way it works is you shoot out these pustules, and when you poison them, it kind of like pops based on your poison. You can read the skill here. But the more you poison it, the more explosion damage it deals. And that's how we're applying a huge poison. So I've linked this to Envenom to give it a higher chance to poison on hit. I don't know if there's a better way to make this poison, but this is what I'm doing. It is a 96% chance to poison right now. I could get it to 100. I just don't think it's worth it because I'm shooting out so many. Like, it doesn't really matter if one of these misses. There's 11 of them. Quality adds projectiles, so it's worth it to add quality here. Comorbidity, +1 poison. Since we're a Pathfinder, it's basically +2 poisons, which is nice. The less poison duration is kind of offset by this right here. You have increased duration based on the amount that you've, inflicted. You could read it. I'm not gonna read it all, but yeah, the gas arrow poisons everything, gives you duration plus all the other nodes on the tree. It's pretty awesome. Deadly poison is something I'm messing with because it increases the magnitude. And as you can see, the magnitude does all this. Pause if you need to. It's pretty nice. And then Chaos Infusion. That's a gem you unlock later on, but you get a portion of damage as extra chaos, which helps scale the initial poison or the poison hit. Vine Arrow. I qualityed it for the sake of doing it. I don't really use this for damage. I use it for slowing, a little bit of health regen, a little bit of mana regen. So when you're in radius of this thing, you get the font. So you regen life and mana, which is decent. It's not a game changer, oops, but it's something. You're not always going to be near it, but you can play around it. It helps you definitely plant some more growths when you're getting ready for a boss fight. This is something I just added in. I don't know if it's worth it yet. I'm still testing it, but I'm using Rain of Arrows to call, Drain Soul for mana regen, and Wither. The problem I'm noticing, and I don't know if I'm going to keep it, is the arrows don't hit everything. Like, it has a chance to miss an enemy. So it doesn't always call stuff when I need it to. It's really only good against larger bosses. But when it does work, obviously call is nice, and then you get the mana regen, which is kind of fat, because I'm always Despair, I hardly ever press this button if I'm being honest, but when I do, it's nice. There's some mobs in the game that are curse resistant, or chaos resistant, and it's nice to have something to push that back down to base level so you can actually do damage. So I press this when I encounter mobs that are just tanky, basically. I really don't need it at any other time. It can be swapped out for Enfeeble or Tempt Chains, but I like Despair so far. Heightened Curse is good, increases the effect. Then you have the Focus Curse. I like it. It just makes it pop quicker, so it's easier to land it on an enemy that might be moving quick. And then Hex Bloom. This is really nice. Like when you're in the middle of a breach and you have everything surrounding you, you can pop one curse down real fast and it just pro-lifts to everything. So it's nice. More effective with Despair, or Enfeeble, which reduces the damage an enemy will deal to you, but I mean, you can pick your poison. You can swap it out too. It's super easy to swap gems in and out. So, yeah. Withering Presence. This is really nice too. Basically, anything in my presence just gets withered. It's kind of nice. And Wither, I'll show you, applies a 5% increased chaos damage taken. So, everything in my presence takes more chaos damage. It's not always close to stuff, but sometimes it comes in handy. It also stacks really well with the Rain of Arrows applying Wither, and yes, they do stack, so you can apply it super duper quick. And Plague Bear, here's a big boy. This gem really scales off of levels, and you can store a lot more poison per level. The quality on this makes it so you can store poison faster. It's not always a big deal, so you don't really need it, but here's the nuke. It's huge. It stores up like all this poison damage, 6,000, and I can just release it, and then it poisons everything again. So it's insane. I've got it set up on like AoE mode right now with Magnified Effect and Expanse and then Splinter. These are maybe change, I don't know. You can swap Expanse for like concentrated effects, so it reduces the area, but I think increases the potency. I'm not actually sure if it scales with that gem, but I know that I can put it in there, so I think it does. It's just the tooltip doesn't change, so it's hard to figure it out. But yeah, breaking armor is never a bad thing, and it does physical damage, so it smacks. Wind Dancer, this is actually an important setup, because it gives you a ton of evasion. 18% more. Well, this is based on the level 16 gem. Yours might be less, but it's huge. So I have a ton of evasion, which puts me to a comfortable level. When I dodge roll, I have even more. But this is linked to blind, which is important. So when I get popped here, when I actually get hit by a melee attack, I get smacked, and all these stacks drop. And what's important is that when those stacks drop, you're going to be vulnerable. You're not going to have that evasion, which is the #1 line of defense. So you want to blind the enemy, which is going to make it so that they're less accurate against you. So it's just kind of like, I don't know, makes the evasion you do have stronger. Maim. Just slows. It's really not a big deal. And then Clarity. For a little bit of increased mana regen. Makes a bit of a difference when you have this thing down too for the font of mana. And then the other, you know, if you're calling, you get the soul drain. So I mean, there's some things we could do for some mana regen, but for the most part, it's tough. Okay, those are the gems. I think that's really what people wanted to see. So I mentioned, and I'll say this before I forget it, the Wind Dancer. Yeah, I've taken escape strategy to kind of counteract the loss of evasion here. So when I do get hit and lose those stacks, I actually get 100% increased evasion, which is fat. It's huge, huge, huge. So okay, the strategy here. Attack speed, some projectile damage, evasion, and poison. Really, like, you just find those nodes and then path efficiently. But here's what I've got. Magnitude of poisons here. Chance for attacks to maim on hit against poisoned enemies. Again, that just slows stuff. You want to take like all the nodes that give you +1 poison, because again, we're a Pathfinder, it multiplies. I'll show that while I'm talking about it, right? So the first ascendancy you want to get is this one. The most damaging poison on enemies you kill is spread. Poison prolif is super duper strong. And then overwhelming toxicity doubles your poisons. It's just huge damage increase. I actually don't think the other ascendancies are very good. I tried Poisonous Concoction a little bit. It felt awful. Don't want to play it. I might play it later when I can get better gear and then turn it into a bit of a boss killer and take like shield nodes and stuff. And I don't know. I think it has potential. Just not ready for it right now. Ideally, you'd probably go like Enduring Elixirs. I think that might be secretly strong. But otherwise, like, just do whatever you want. Like, these are the only things you really need. The toxicity. If you feel like this is good, I don't, take it. I tried it out. I don't think it's impactful whatsoever. For the most part, we're staying in the back and we're hiding behind corners. And like, yeah, this is useless. There's 30% less movement speed penalty. That's nothing. Try it out for yourself. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's such a garbage waste of points. And then your speed is unaffected by slows. I could see that being useful, but you have to path through this garbage to get there, so it's like a waste of time. I'd rather have a humongous life flask that never drops off, so it's basically like you're leeching the whole time. I don't think much needs explained. You just take evasion stuff. Here's the dodge roll recently. Poison, magnitude, durations, you know, just basic stuff. I'll show you the gem I have in a second, but the Falcon technique is decent for a ton of attack speed. Then you come through here for the dex and increased evasion from the body armor. This is huge. You get a ton. And it's important to have a ton of flat evasion so that you can scale it with that Wind Dancer we talked about. Low tolerance is cool. The interaction with that is when your poison prolifs to a new target, you have 60% increased effective poison. So that can be pretty strong, and I think it is. It's hard to notice it sometimes. Kite Runner for proj damage and some move speed mostly. Magnitude of poison. Leeching toxins is actually huge. The life recovery on kill is ginormous. Here's the jewel. You're going to want stuff like this. I think if I could get all my jewels to look like this, I would, but it's going to be hard. I actually made this one myself, and I don't know how the fuck I got so lucky, but I did. It's insane. Dark Entities, +1 to all chaos skills. Again, escalating toxins for poison duration, which is good. Building toxins for +1, aka +2. Another example of a jewel. This one's pretty awful, actually. It's 2 mods, need to replace it. Here's our important part. This is kind of a new addition. Once I got it into like tier 8-ish maps, I just kept getting rocked, and I needed to increase my life pool. So that's where I went with armor and mind over matter. Increases, I think this increases my life pool by like 340 or 350 something life. So that's pretty good. And then, yeah, this is just extra chaos because I'm in the area. This node, I already have the Withering Presence gem, so I don't think this is useful. It only applies 1 stack of Wither, and I mean, yeah, it's increased effect. I mean, I don't think it's really good. Anything that I need withered, I'll use the Rain of Arrows on. And yeah, that pretty much covers it. This is all, you know, a work in progress. I don't know how much of this I'll keep or change. I mean, the poison nodes are solid, like those really can't change. But like, you know, the Kite Runner, like this, all these points can be changed. I tried the Pocket Sand for increased blind effect and chance to blind on hit, which actually works decently with, you know, Toxic Growth and Gas Arrow. Like all that stuff applies blind relatively well. And then, yeah, there's a bunch of other nodes. Some stuff's hard to get to. I tried acceleration, but I mean, look at how far you have to go to get here. And then there's nothing else in the area except for maybe this. Damage with bows, attack speed, but like, I don't want this stuff. I don't care about this so much. So there's really not a whole lot in the area. I thought about maybe coming down this way to get Frenzy Charges now that I've got Rain of Arrows, because that actually has an interaction where you consume frenzies and get more arrows, which might solve the calling issue, but again, don't know if it's worth it. Getting Frenzy Charges is a whole new issue that I don't really want to solve for right now, but that's pretty much the build. Don't think I missed a whole lot. Covered the gear. I think I covered it all. Passives, gems. Yeah, pretty sure that's everything. Again, I'll link the build planner in the description below. If you have any questions, you can just comment. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to make a leveling guide for something like this, because while leveling, I change so much all the time. But I thought about it. But mostly just figure it out yourself. GG. Peace.